Hello, everyone. Alexis Brooks from Higher Journeys back yet again with another episode of Conscious Commentary. Hope you all are doing well wherever you may be on this fine day. Well, in thinking about what I wanted to discuss with you today, this is something that actually came to me some time ago. And, I've gotten to the point now where, when the muses are talking, they do not stop. When they cease to talk, you're like, okay, I need a little help here on what we're going to be discussing. Well, the muses were talking to me pretty loud about a week or so ago. And I said, you know what, this time I'm actually going to pull out my little iPhone and do a little voice memo so I can be reminded of what I'd like to share with you in this episode of Conscious Commentary. And here's what came to me. Multidimensionality. What is it? What does it mean to be a multidimensional being? That's one of those words that's sort of bandied around a lot these days and has been for quite some time, both in academic and quasi-academic circles, scientific circles, as well as those of us in the sort of metaphysical subculture. The multiverse, we hear these terms of this intimation that the reality that we occupy is not comprised of one linear space or even time frame, but a multitude, albeit not visible to the physical eye. It's a very interesting thing, and I wish I knew more about the science of this, because it is being studied from a very, very scientific, from a subatomic perspective. Us being, well, first and foremost, our universe being multidimensional. Let's call that the macro, but us as well, matching that frequency with multiple frequencies, the fact that we are perhaps more than one being living in more than one space. I don't want to use the word space because that's not it. Living in more than one dimension, literally. I think that's an exotic and provocative idea. But I'll tell you how this thought kind of came to me. It's the funniest thing, guys, when you sort of get on this stream of consciousness or have this stream of consciousness, and some of the most mundane things can kick off a very, very deep philosophical dive into certain subjects. And here's what did it for me, multidimensional. I must have been, I don't know if I was preparing some food or maybe listening to some music, things that we do in our everyday lives. And, I've thought about this before, and I'd like to hear about your style, but here's mine. In terms of food, people ask me, well, what's your favorite food? And I love to cook. I love to prepare food. So they'll say to me, what's your favorite cuisine to prepare? And I'm like, I don't have a favorite. I love Asian and prepare it. I've prepared Middle Eastern, Italian, French, Caribbean, soul food, you name it. I love to eat. I love to eat all food, and I love to prepare all kinds of food. And I actually relish in learning different culinary styles. And then that got me to thinking, music. What's your favorite music genre? I don't have one. I grew up in the entertainment industry with a very famous cousin, actually, who is a well-known jazz artist, and have been around music all my life. But guess what? I love virtually all genres of music. And if you were to look on my iPhone, or these days, I don't know, wherever the heck we store our music, it's everywhere, it's ubiquitous, you would find absolutely every format you can imagine. I love classical, including opera. I love 70s rock. That's right. Pink Floyd. I love Elton John. I love Fleetwood Mac. I love Parliament Funkadelic and Stevie Wonder. Beyonce, I suppose, at least in the early days. I love all kinds of music, even some country. I love world music. Okay, I don't want to get stuck on what Alexis loves, but the bottom line is I started looking at every aspect of my life, and I realized I don't have one style. With the exception of, I think I have a favorite color. That would be cobalt blue, by the way. I don't have one home style. In my home, if you were to see it, you would, oh gosh, I've got about 14 different tones of color, paint colors. I've got different styles from European to country to modern to eclectic. Every aspect. My garden, you guys know I love to garden, right? I have a Japanese garden, I have a cottage garden, I have a formal garden, I have a country garden, woodland garden. Heck, what does this have to do with multidimensionality, I thought? Is there something to this? So let me cut to the chase. Can we not delineate, but can we begin to understand ourselves a little bit more by examining the things that we surround ourselves with? People. Let's go back to some of the things Alexis likes. I have such an eclectic group of friends and colleagues. Oh, when we throw parties here, you've got just about every culture, everything. I have always loved a potpourri of stuff. And when I say stuff, I obviously don't mean physical things. Well, the objects to art included, but people, language, travel, music, you name it. Again, we're going to be examining the macro and the micro and how they relate to one another of multidimensionality. I was just talking to a colleague of mine. In fact, it was Miguel Mendonça who wrote Meet the Hybrids. I talk to my buddy almost daily. And I said, Miguel, I'm about to go on the air here, and I want to run this concept by you. And I kind of gave him the download on this sort of musing that I had about the fact that I cannot nail one particular style of anything that I like versus something else. And that got me thinking about, does this have something to do with the fact that I am coming into my multidimensionality? He had me, in Miguel's style, Mr. Studios Miguel referred me to a book. Actually, it's a book that I was actually a part of called We Are the Disclosure, another book of his, great 2-volume book, and pointed me to one of the authors who was also interviewed, who speaks about multidimensionality. So a little bit later, I'm going to read something very interesting that she had to say about that. I guess where I want to go, guys, is if even the mundane, what we call the mundane, not so much mundane, but what we surround ourselves on the 3D level, taking notice of that and looking at our likes, our dislikes, how vast or not our spectrum of those likes are, or how limited they are. Could that be a hint as to how close we are to living a multidimensional life? Now, obviously, I am talking about the micro here, because if you were to refer to the macro aspects of multidimensionality, they're often referred to outside of the 3D realm. Do we exist on other dimensions with other personas, other energy signatures? That would be more, from my perspective, the macro. But even in how we live our day-to-day lives, could that be a hint as to how immersed we are in the broader spectrum of multidimensionality? Does that make sense? I hope it does. Because as I kind of delve into these subjects or into these concepts, I have to kind of try to make it make sense for me. I don't know that it does. I'm kind of working it out along with you guys, but it is quite interesting to me. And as far as, I'm going to have to focus on my own life, because that's the only reference point I have for how this came to be. And just kind of stepping back and saying, gosh, I don't have a favorite anything. And, at first blush, I thought, oh, shouldn't I? Just for a quick second. And then I stood back and said, well, heck no. We're here to enjoy the fullness of life and not just tolerate other cultures and languages and religions and whatever. I don't like that word, by the way. Tolerate is not the same as immersing ourselves in appreciating how multidimensional even here on the 3D is. So this brings me to another point. And this is a sticking point for me that I really hope I can drive home here today. And that is, in looking at an average person, I don't want to say average because I don't think anyone is average, but the average life, let's just say, of a person, and how the individual seems to be so tethered to, I have to pick a favorite this. Let me give you an example. I love interior design, and so I watch a network here in the United States called HGTV. Okay, plug for HGTV as opposed to HJTV. That would be me. But it's a home show. It's a home network, and they have some great programming to the extent that I watch it. And I never cease to be amazed, guys, as I'm watching, you've got shows where people are relocating or they're renovating a home, or they're doing, these days it's a big fixer-upper thing. You guys know about some of those shows, right? Love them, actually. They're kind of fun. But I will always listen to whomever the focus of the show is, that's maybe buying a home and flipping it or renovating it, and the person, you've got the people that are doing the renovating perhaps, or purchasing the home, or the real estate people. And then you've got, of course, the buyers. And the question will arise, well, what style do you like? I like open concept. I like hardwood floors. It has to be granite and stainless steel. Very specific. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with being specific. I actually think that's a good thing. But it's just one thing or another. Well, what's your favorite food? Oh, pizza. No doubt, hands down, my favorite food. Now, look, I just want to say for the record, there's nothing wrong with having a favorite something. We all have a favorite something, I suppose, except for me. It's kind of funny, actually, as I look back, because I don't know that I ever took it in this way before, but I realized I don't really have a favorite anything. But here's my point, in all seriousness. Is it my imagination, or does the society itself, those, we call them the reality creators, the pop culture makers, do they encourage us to pick one or the other? When you think about it, is there ever a time that you can recall when whomever, let's say it's somebody you're interviewing with, somebody for a job, and they'll say, what's your favorite? I don't know what. What's your best aspect? It's always a singular thing. You got to pick one or another. I suppose this goes back to my what I use all the time. This phrase I say. It's not about this or that. Have you heard me say that before in various discussions? It's not about this or that. It's about this and that and that and that and that. That has always been my philosophy. It's not black or white. There are infinite shades of gray. It's not one thing or another. It's not just good or bad. Bringing things down to a singular focus, to me, flies in the face of who we are as multidimensional beings. If we're multidimensional, even beyond the 3D, and again, I think that's how the term is generally used, then we are certainly, it stands to be shown that we can appreciate multiple things without picking one or another. I hope I'm not beating a dead horse here, but it was just very interesting for me to step back and look at myself and say, actually, I'm quite grateful for the fact that I've always been this way. But again, comparing the macro with the macro, of course, being a multidimensional universe, parallel realities, and multiple selves, perhaps existing on multiple dimensions, and how that relates to how we live here. Despite conventional science, let's go into the science bit a bit, the science bit for a bit. Despite their sort of long-held beliefs that reality is solid and physical and singular, there are other schools of thought, particularly some indigenous cultures, that have always felt reality to be multidimensional, including this 3D reality. Those that embrace multidimensionality will often find themselves being in a physical space and seeing it in different ways depending on when they're looking at it. I think of my friend Cynthia Sue Larson and her famous reality shifts. She contends that reality is constantly shifting, and we can glimpse its fluctuations if we're paying attention. So there is no one singular reality, even here in the 3D. So why would we be? Why would our likes be held to a singular focus? But moreover, Why would we be so encouraged to keep them locked in a singular focus? I suppose I'm bringing up a little bit of a conspiratorial aspect. Are we being kept in a box on purpose so that we are unable to explore our own multidimensionality? That's a question. I don't know. I just find it quite interesting. And again, getting back to pop culture and looking at these television programs where the person is constantly being almost not encouraged, but forced to answer, what is your favorite this? What is your style? As if it's one thing. And God forbid it's more than one thing. Well, that's a problem. You got to pick one. No, you don't. And as a matter of fact, I would encourage you to embrace all of it. Now, there's things that you're not going to like. Fine. There are things I don't like. Lots of things I don't like. But many I do and appreciate, most importantly. I think that when we can learn to embrace the multi aspects of even our surroundings, we will bring ourselves closer to the multidimensionality of who we are. Do you know what I mean? So I would ask yourself, what is my style? Or do I have a style? Why do you even have to have one? I love it all. I love it all. I may not be able to have it all, but I can appreciate it all. I can relate to much of it. And that's another interesting thing that may or may not get into today. Relatability and how, again, we're constantly being encouraged to go with what we relate to versus exploring outside of that multidimensionality. As promised, let me read something to you. Maybe we'll end with this. This is from a woman named Vanessa Lamort. Vanessa was actually one of the hybrids who was featured in the book Meet the Hybrids. That, by the way, we're going to be, I'll get to that later. A little plug for Meet the Hybrids. We're going to be talking about that in our next show. But Vanessa was also featured in a book along with myself called We Are the Disclosure, both by Miguel Mendonça. And I want to read this to you because it has to do with multidimensionality and by not embracing it, what the consequences may be. So let me go ahead and read this quote to you. It says, when she works with people about their ET aspects and sort of psychic proclivities, if you will, really helping people develop those things. So she says, when clients come to me with problems, their dis-ease, dis-ease, often comes from an incomplete view of what we actually are. It can always be traced back to the incompleteness of their idea or perception or framework of what they are. I feel that most people operate in one perception of themselves, which is, let's say, hi, I'm Susie Q. I'm a nurse. I have 5 kids. I live in Michigan. And that's it. This is why that signature word I always use, multidimensionality, is so important. What I mean by that is that we are not just that one person. There are other aspects. She actually says there are other off-planet aspects in this context. We are not just that one person. We don't have to just like that one thing or have that one style or listen to this one kind of music or speak just one language. Why would we if we are indeed multidimensional? So again, I ask you to explore that in yourself. Certainly, don't force yourself to like things that you don't find a natural affinity to. But if you go out of that, quote, comfort zone a little bit, explore outside of that a bit, you might discover that there's a heck of a lot more that you've just not included in your own personal portfolio that you do actually like. And that may just help you discover multidimensionality of you. Let me say that again. Explore outside of your little bubble. And you may just find the multidimensionality of you. That's what I want to leave you with. So that was my stream of consciousness, all triggered by me going, I don't have a favorite anything. And you know what? I love it. Okay, there you have it, folks. That is it for Conscious Commentary for today. Discovering your multidimensional self. Now, on to the next show, next Wednesday. So excited. Just confirmed this, by the way. Now, you know we're going to be talking about Meet the Hybrids. How could we not? Because the audiobook just came out. Actually, I don't want to say just came out. It's been about a month. And I think I'm still hoarse from voicing that book. But nonetheless, it's out. People are loving it. I'm so excited and so gratified. And again, so honored to have been a part of this project. Well, next week, we're going to be featuring one of the co-authors of that book. I bet a lot of you know the name Barbara Lamb. Extraordinary regression therapist who has regressed thousands upon thousands of individuals back to their ET aspect in many cases. I'm so excited. We're going to be talking about the experience of she and her co-author Miguel Mendonça, and what it was like working with these 8 ET human hybrids and putting together what became an extraordinary body of work called Meet the Hybrids. So that's next week, Barbara Lamb. And I'm still working on it as we speak, we may actually be able to get one of the hybrids that was interviewed for the book. I'm not going to mention the name because I'm not sure. I got to give her a call and see if she'd be willing to come on. We really want to hear from her. This was an extraordinary work, guys. And I hope you get a copy. Again, whether it's the paperback or the Audible version is up to you. But it's something that you will want to read or listen to again and again. And multidimensionality is definitely addressed on multiple occasions in this book, why it's so important that we do embrace it. So stay tuned next week. That will be our show with Ms. Barbara Lamb. All right, everyone, I am out. It's always a pleasure to spend a little bit of time with you. Until next time, I am your host of Higher Journeys and Conscious Commentary, Alexis Brooks. Take care.